what do they call that? Like the butterfly effect. Like if you change one thing in the past, it'll have all these crazy unintended consequences in the future.
Yeah, yeah.
Dude, it's like that in nutrition, man. You take out one thing, you thinking that, I don't know, spinach or something. I just don't feel like spinach is helping me. Like I don't feel any good sensations from spinach. Like I just don't see it doing anything. Like I'm just gonna get rid of it. Like if it doesn't make me feel good, then I don't need to be eating it. So it's out, right? And you get rid of spinach, and then all of a sudden you're having this breakdown of like you can't get vitamin D to activate, and therefore since you can't do that, you try and eat these high calcium foods like milk and whatnot, cheese, and you just have no taste for them. You feel like you're forcing them down, and since you're forcing them down and you're not vitamin D activated, calcium actually irritates your gut, and so then you're getting serotonin effects from trying to consume the calcium that you were previously consuming just fine.
Health Chasers, achieving high health and happiness through the practices of self-experimentation. Just unlimited number of different combinations of reactions going on. And then also, would you say that also is playing off the external part as well from the sun?
Yes, I think that there's a light pathway from the eyes directly to the gut. And I don't know exactly how that works but I can feel the effect of light that I'm visually seeing. I can feel that kind of affect my digestion process in just really subtle sensations. If you're really in tune with your body, you can get a sense of these things. You step out and you're in a darkened room and there's no sensation of digestion, and then you step out into bright sunlight and you're looking right at it, and all of a sudden it's like your gut is like someone's flipped it on, turned the switch to on.
Yeah, I almost feel like and this is just my intuition telling me this, but I almost feel like eating a meal at night before bed is just totally just a metabolism destroyer, just based on just darkness. And I could be wrong, but I wake up a lot of times in the morning. I'll wake up, not every morning, but I'll wake up a little bit stiff, and I just feel like the lack of movement, the lack of circulation and digestion kind of hinders me almost to a certain extent. Not all the time, but...
And you noticed that specifically when you ate late?
Yeah. Well, I'll just give you a backstory of last night. We had a date night last night, and we decided to go eat Mexican. I haven't had Mexican in I don't know, probably since the last time that me and you went. And
yeah, no, I think we talked about it last time on the podcast that you ate Mexican, got destroyed.
Yeah. I don't know why I didn't learn my lesson, but I just figured I wouldn't eat the chips and I'd be all right. I didn't have anything bad, but it was I had like shrimp, I had like ceviche. And then I had like what else did I have? I had just like cheese, vegetarian, like enchiladas. It's like cheese and spinach enchiladas.
That should be pretty safe. What happened?
The chips happened.
Oh,
so
man.
I ate the chips with the ceviche, and that's probably just destroyed me.
I was actually thinking about that today. I was like, there's got to be some easy rules that we can go by to make eating out okay. And I'm along the lines of just eat vegetarian, because whatever they cook the meat in is not going to be acceptable. It's going to destroy you for days. So just cut meat out of restaurant meals. And then if you limit the liquid PUFA, so like the oils and whatnot, and there's just like so much of that in those chips. But if you cut that out, and probably those two things are the things that can really harm you, like long term. Like most of the time I eat out ever, it's dinner, so it's like, if you can just call it a day and you don't necessarily have to perform all that great, you kind of get like 12 hours just till the next meal, kind of, and it seems like you can bounce back pretty easily from that, but not if you go really high liquid PUFA, and not if you go meat cooked in something crazy.
Yeah. So actually, it was a good learning experience for the final time that I did that. So I'm gonna go with that if I ever.
That's what you said last time. I think that's kind of why, because there is so many temptations at Mexicans places, because there's just so many different things going on. I think that's why I've always been, or not always, but recently, within the last year or two, just been steering towards pizza. Like if I'm going to eat out at all. One, because it's delicious. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing food. But two, because it's like you go to a pizza place and they just have pizza there. So if you get one pizza, like that's the only kind of pizza that's going to be involved with you. There's no dessert at pizza places. There's no nothing. So if you can do a pizza and you can will your way into getting some sort of vegetarian pizza, whatever that may be, because obviously the meat at a pizza place is in that's the same problems anywhere else. So if you can somehow get away with doing a vegetarian pizza, which can still be absolutely delicious, the only thing you might need to worry about is like fungal overload from that yeast just taking over your digestion system and massively replicating because of the unbalanced radio waves we have shooting through the air every second of our lives.
Exactly.
But beyond that, I feel like pizza's pretty good, and you can, me and you know how to take these fungal precautions. Or I guess they're not precautions; they're after the fact.
When I got home from eating, I knew it was just instantaneous. Like it was just negative right off the bat. Like after I got home, and so
really,
I went to yeah. Well, I mean, it took us a while to get home, but
yeah.
I was probably an hour after the meal. I knew normally the digestion would have done its normal thing, and it was kind of extra slow. And I knew if I didn't do something like Copper Cup or.
Well, let me ask you this about the Mexican meals though, because I've found there can be a big problem with too much lycopene. And lycopene is the red coloring in tomatoes and watermelon and whatnot. But tomatoes specifically, like for Mexican food, is all over the place. So, are you eating these Mexican food meals? Because I know you said salsa. Like if you're mentioning chips, you're pretty much eating salsa. Not all the time. You can have queso and guacamole or whatever else. But if you're shooting up that red lycopene in the meal, and then also depending on what you have lycopene with, that can cause like crazy fungal overload, because for whatever reason the red takes in red and probably infrared light, and I'm not sure why, but fungus absolutely thrive on red and infrared light. So you'll massively overstimulate fungal growth.
I think it was in the ceviche. I didn't have any actual salsa with the chips, but it was just probably in the ceviche, the pico. But how does that so how does that work with? Because we always have fungus right in our bodies, and so when we eat a meal of like something of red color, you've noticed in your diet, like you get. Talk about some of the symptoms that you get for fungal overgrowth.
I guess it depends where it's localized. You can do things that move nutrients to the brain, and then if there was fungus in those nutrients, then the fungus is going to the brain, and so you'll have that effect in the brain. but the main byproduct of most fungus is acetic acid. So they're, I guess, pooping out. You could kind of consider it pooping out acetic acid and vinegar for the lay person.
Mm-hmm.
But so you're basically going to see overproduction of acetic acid in these areas. So it could be happening in the gut, and in that case, I think that's what's happening in most people that are like destroying their gut lining, like with Crohn's disease or gastritis or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could be very well what's happening. It's just the situations are perfect for overproduction of fungal produced acetic acid in the gut, and you put that acetic acid in a safe place or do some safe chemical reaction with it to detoxify it, and the gut lining is destroyed. Because the gut lining, as far as I can tell, it's basically phosphate. Like if you have phosphate in the gut lining, you have a gut lining. And once you strip away all the phosphate, because the phosphate is like it's the preferential energy source. So it's like, I mean, to me, it's the only energy source because it's the only acceptable energy source. But if you consider phosphate energy, then the food interacts with that phosphate in some way that activates it. I'm getting away from your question. I'm sorry.
When you have a fungal issue post meal, is it instantaneous or does it slowly kind of come on with symptoms?
I think it
kind of read off that.
It's not instantaneous, but it could be really quick. It could be in a matter of minutes. There's different things that you could do. So you can have, like, I bought a supplement powder for the first time in like a long time this week or this last week, and I tried it. And most supplement powders, especially if they're just a crushed up plant, they're gonna have some sort of fungus problem in there. It's never like a ton, but it's always going to be just some amount of fungus mixed in there. And so if you just consume it straight, you're consuming that supplement and a little bit of fungus. And then it kind of directs that supplement down the acetic acid pathway, as I like to call it. I guess it just depends kind of what you're eating a food that's usually, I mean, it could be two things. It can be there's fungus in the food in some amount, maybe a large amount or maybe a small amount, or maybe you're consuming stuff that just preferentially helps fungus grow over other stuff, over lactic acid bacteria or whatever else you got going on, or just takes over versus your natural sterilization effect. Because we have some sort of sterilization fact that's happening every day. It's not completely understood. There's probably multiple ways of doing it. UV light from the sun definitely has some sort of sterilization effect against microbes. But so you can be eating. So let's say it's just with a Mexican meal. So none of that food is probably contaminated with fungus. At least not bad enough to worry about. But just having an overload of lycopene, we know that stimulates fungal production. And then if you combine that lycopene with certain things that take that to certain areas, such as the brain, if there's a bunch of maybe lemon juice going along with that, because I know ceviche, they kind of try and make it tangy. So if they're mixing like citric acid in there, it's probably going to the brain. So then all of a sudden you have a fungal issue that's hitting the brain. This is part of a probably, way bigger topic and concept, and I could talk for hours about it, but fungus is part of your body, and it's never going to go away. You just don't
Mm-hmm.
want it to be overgrown and like take over.
Take over
So,
your body's function and
well,
state.
basically it's basically the acetic acid that's taking over. I'm not aware of any other negative effect that's coming from the fungus. There could be other ones. I'm not sure, but definitely, without a doubt, like the main negative effect is overproduction of acetic acid in these specific areas. So it could be just in the gut itself, and then that infection is like really easy to take care of. You know, you can consume. There's probably a lot of metals that would do it. I know me and you are pretty much doing copper related stuff. I like just doing water that's been in a copper cup for like a day,
Mm-hmm.
and that basically knocks it out immediately, or not immediately, really quickly.
Yeah, that's what I did last night.
That can. I'm always worried about you when you say you're doing the copper cup, because it can obviously lead to like way too much copper in your system. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what's so great about using a nutrient as an antibiotic is once it's done killing the microbes that you want killed, you can use it as a nutrient. So it's almost the perfect. It's a perfect balance, unless you just overdo it, and then you get massive copper and then massive estrogen as a result of that.
So you get these fungal issues. This is going
Yeah.
on, every meal, right? This every interaction, every
I,
moment
I
of the day.
yeah, dude. I think fungus should be the number one topic in health. Like, everyone should be talking about this. Everyone should know about this. We got a massive problem. In my opinion, autism is probably from fungus. At least contributing to it, if not the sole cause. Massively contributing to it. Because every time I see what an autistic person's eating, it's like perfect fungal food. They're eating like massive PUFA, which I'm not sure exactly what the PUFA does in relation to fungus, but I think it's just like deactivating your defenses so that
Mm.
fungus reproduce better or something along those lines. And then like every autistic person or kid that I see is like chugging apple juice. I'm not sure why apple juice is this way. If it's a malic acid or something else that's just innately in there, but it's like fungus absolutely thrive on it. It's almost like it's made for fungus, because obviously your body's using fungus to achieve a goal. You know what I mean? That's how it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be the fungus are just constantly overrunning us, destroying us. It's supposed to be, we're using them to probably like finish the citric acid cycle, the Krebs cycle, because that's like the main, I guess you could say, the main purpose of the cell. I might be wrong in that view, but it's probably like a fundamental process of the cell. And so it's like the cells can only function really well if we're using fungus.
Well, how does that? So we got fungus, and then we also am I getting off topic if we talk about how that relates to bacteria?
A little bit, yeah. It's
So it's
like
just
they're
completely
both
different.
kind of. I mean, I guess they're both in the same ballpark. They're microbes that can potentially get out of hand,
Mm-hmm.
but and bacteria, I think, are the lactic acid bacteria are probably very, very likely useful to the body in the same way, where their
Mm-hmm.
production of lactic acid as a byproduct is used by our body to do stuff, potentially also having to do with the Krebs cycle. But we don't necessarily need to fear the bacteria running away and getting out of control and taking over. At least lactic acid bacteria. Maybe, obviously there's some, you can get infections of some weird strains of bacteria that do this and do that, but they're probably not lactic acid producing bacteria. They're probably, because there's acetic acid producing bacteria as well that can probably do all the negative things that out of control fungus do. But the main bacteria that we introduce or interact with in food is lactic acid bacteria from cheese and yogurt and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And but they just don't necessarily get out of hand the way that fungus does. And so the question is, well, why does fungus get out of control constantly and lactic acid bacteria doesn't? I have a theory that the fungus is some sort of a receptor of radio waves based on just the structure of fungus. And so it can receive radio waves almost like as energy to grow. And so in the modern world, we're bombarded with radio waves. And
yep, 24/7.
Which might be how our body uses fungus. Like because we kind of stimulate our own signals. And so we might be using these fungus as beasts of burden almost, because they're easily signaled to produce the acetic acid that we want, like kind of on demand. But the modern world is like incredibly overstimulating that. That's my guess of what's happening in autistic people. Is they have just runaway infections that probably in the brain. That's what I would guess.
And they just don't have the defense, the defenses for that.
That I'm not sure. Because I don't really look into that. Good health is my focus, not health problems necessarily. But that's, if I had to take a guess at what autism is, it's a runaway fungal infection somewhere in the brain, or maybe everywhere in the brain, and that acetic acid is over polluting, and it's not allowing like just proper function of the brain. It's limiting it in some way, and that's why you see autistic people doing crazy, just like repetitive stuff. I know I've seen in some videos of like kids where they'll be like hitting their head repeatedly against a wall.
Like, get out of here, fungus! Get out of my body!
It is almost like that. That's how it seems to me. Because people have intuition, especially kids. They got intuition about what's going on. But, they can't understand it. They don't have the facts. They don't know what's going on. They just feel what's going on.
I wonder how that connects with different behaviors from like just people in general. I bet that has opens up the door of just all kinds of, people that are just, suffer from depression or anxiety, anger.
Oh, yeah. Fungus is so involved in all those things. Because it's not just the overproduction of acetic acid. It's that acetic acid is used by the body. So even if it's used, even if it's not just, staying in the gut and destroying the gut lining, even if it goes down the standard usage pathway, well, it's getting used, So like it's causing some effect. It's having some effect. So if you just eat, yeast covered pizza every single day, you're having a massive influx of fungus every single day of your life, and that fungus is guaranteed to be producing a crap ton of acetic acid, and that acetic acid is going to be doing stuff.
I don't know if this is related at all, but some of the patients that I come across are diabetic. or I mean, they don't have to be diabetic, but you know, a lot of them that we come across just have like if they have some sort of health issue. I don't know why, but when we come to see them, they usually have no shoes on. So we, for some reason, get to see their feet for some unknown reason, and they're just totally just out of control, disgusting. And so that makes me think of like just fungus overgrowth.
Well, you got to think about it, like the soil only works because of fungus, as far as like growing plants and whatnot. So the soil is getting hit with Schumann resonance, because Schumann resonance comes from, I don't think they technically know where it comes from. They say it like originates from the earth. I'm kind of more thinking it originates from the sun, when the sun hits the earth. But that's neither here nor there. You know, there's Schumann in the soil, and I think I've proven through my experiences of playing Schumann resonance, that I can stimulate the fungus in the soil. But the fungus is in the soil to do work. That's what it does down there. It breaks stuff down. You know, I possibly by acetic acid. I don't really know how soil fungus is working, but it's stimulated by this resonance. It accomplishes tasks in the soil, gives the plants nutrients, and you have a thriving plant. Oh yeah, so okay, so fungus is like it's like God's breaker downer. It's like it returns every living thing back to just minerals, just a pile of minerals. And I guess maybe you could argue that bacteria does that as well, but I know that fungus is like, in my opinion, that's what it was designed to do. If it was designed, that's what it was. It's designed to return living things into a pile of minerals to help new living things flourish. So if you have these peripheral limb problems, like it's not by chance that the diabetics, part of their body, their feet, that's furthest away from, you know, their organs, like the heart, is that the feet are like the hardest hit, you know. I don't think that's not by chance. I think you're talking about a circulation problem. And then when you have a circulation problem, the immune system is kind of tied into blood flow for whatever reason. I know a lot of people say it's this type of, you know, white blood cells or whatever. I think of things kind of in a different way, like electric effect or magnetic effect or combinations, and then, you know, radio wave effect or some sort of signaling effect, and the combination of all those things is kind of why things happen in the body. And so anyways, loss of circulation to the feet, and probably fungus are taking over. They're moving in. They're doing the job that they were designed to do, which is break down life that is losing its life. So it's like the feet, those person's feet are dying, and the fungus is just doing what it thinks it's supposed to do down there.
So serotonin and problem solving, how do you connect those two? Serotonin, I know that it's been in the repeat world that serotonin is viewed as a bad thing, but also all types of foods can give you high serotonin, and that can kind of spindle down into a whole lot of different effects, depression or anxiety, different symptoms like that, right?
So serotonin was what I considered my main problem before I regained control over my health. And serotonin hits you in different ways. There's different receptors in the gut that trigger a serotonin response, and I want to say there's 5 of them, but I could be mistaken on that. Maybe there's more. And I'm not sure exactly they know truly what those receptors do, but I'm guessing they stimulate serotonin in different parts of the brain. And so they have different effects that they produce. One of the effects is itching. So I believe itching is always a serotonin effect. And obviously it's not it's not desirable for any of those people that still think like serotonin's a good thing. You have these serotonin, at least 5 different ways of serotonin hitting you. And I believe through my own just experiences, because my number one thing was gut problems and gut dysfunction and not being able to digest things well and just having a destroyed gut from fungus a lot of the time. So some of the ways that this is hitting you, like obviously like itching is in no way desirable. That doesn't help you in any sense of the word. But one of these other ways that I think it's hitting you is by forcing your brain into problem solving mode. Because people always talk about, I just feel this with my gut that this is right. You know, obviously that term or that phrase, thinking with my gut or going with my gut, that came from somewhere. And people in the past were probably a lot smarter than all of us today, just in so many ways. Like their health was just spot on in probably so many cases. Like their intuition was probably 1,000 times better than our intuition now. Just because they don't, there's just no toxins, there's no radio waves, there's no, giant electromagnets in their pocket.
Right.
I'm not the one who came up with this as far as serotonin and problem solving, but I've definitely noticed that at least one of the triggers of serotonin causes you this problem solving mode that your brain can go in. And since I had probably a whole childhood and teen years and probably into my 20s too of problem solving brain, I guess that can give you like a pretty easy picture of like why I've pretty easily dug into all this nutrition science for years and years and years and years. I have a history of going into problem solving mode from very very early childhood, just pondering like huge questions about life and wanting to solve like the biggest problems that humanity has.
So you're saying that if you have elevated levels of serotonin, one symptom would be that you are always looking for an answer to life's problems?
Any problems. The problems that are confronting you. Because I'm guessing that was designed by God or the extraterrestrials that made us, or whatever you want to call it. It was designed to get us into problem solving mode. Because sometimes we need to be in that mode.
Yeah, serotonin can be utilized for good things.
Well, yeah, for good ends. Like, it's never going to be, I think, pleasurable to have any sort of overload of serotonin in any way. But yeah, potentially it might get you out of your problem. And so why is it connected to the gut? I'm not sure. It might be that mode comes up when your gut lining is getting destroyed. The theory that I was on was like perhaps as the gut lining is getting destroyed, that is like the ultimate trigger for you to go into this mode, programmed into us that way. And so the people who have these gut issues are constantly being forced into this problem solving mode. I think you can, because I look around at the population that we have just in the world and different groups within the population, and you look at like Silicon Valley people, tech people, and it's pretty clear to me that they are definitely stuck in this mode a lot of the time. They're certainly trying to focus on solving the world's problems, even though I think they're usually making the world's problems worse.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see that's the direction like their minds are headed, and so it's just something to identify and just know that that's kind of what's going on, and also to know that it's not enjoyable to be in problem-solving mode. So if you're someone who finds himself in that mode all the time and just goes around and constantly is like trying to fix other people's problems or anything like that, just know your brain is triggering incorrectly. Well, if you're going for pleasure, the most pleasure that you can get out of life, you don't want to be in that mode all the time. In fact, I would argue perhaps you never need to be in that mode, because there's other ways of solving the problems, and I would argue that intuition is a non-serotonin way of solving problems.
Very interesting how that can be connected to problem solving. So if I'm feeling like not doing like being productive, is that tied into productivity at all? Because you have to actually be engaged mentally to want to solve the problems.
Well, serotonin, there's like the positive hormone workings, and then there's like the negative side. And so to me, serotonin problem solving is on like the negative side. Like, yeah, you can get results, but you can also get results from this positive side method, which is like intuition, or I don't know, along the lines of like, people think of it as creativity. To me, I go back and forth. I have a theory that there is no such thing as creativity. That human beings, and perhaps all animals, just have this way of reaching down into the ether, the universe's mind, or whatever, and pulling out and retrieving information. And so I'm leaning towards that. There really isn't such a thing as creativity as we know it. As just like, well, this person's just they're just so amazing and creative. Like, I don't think that. I think they just have a better connection to that source of truthful material, that they can just reach down and grab things. And it probably seems like creativity sometimes, but they're kind of grabbing at things here and there, and maybe when you put all those things all those pieces of information that they're pulling out together, it looks like something amazing and creative, but in reality, it's just something from somewhere else that they got, whether that's an idea or, how to build a electrical system, like Tesla. A lot of that, like Tesla talked about his kind of ways of thinking about stuff, and he talked about his material, like he had like more inventions than anyone in history that we know of. But he talked about how he would put together, he's like, don't even bother writing anything down. Just keep that idea in your brain, and over time, you'll add on new parts. If it's a machine that you're making, the machine will come together in your brain over time. Don't force it, and there's no need to write anything down, because you will improve the machine in your mind. Don't even start building it right away, nothing like that. Just build it in your mind, improve it in your mind, and like just continue that until you're given a signal that it's time to build, or it's time to write it down, or something along those lines. And gotcha. That's what I do, with the theories. I'm not necessarily building machines, but I do build stuff, and I have other projects, outside of nutrition. But it's definitely a mind project first, usually for months. It's just a mind project, and then all of a sudden it'll break forth.
Yeah, creativity is very interesting, because like you could even, now that I think about it, you could say like most of us today lack creativity because we just go and just borrow material from YouTube or wherever we're researching from,
Yeah.
and just make improvements off of that. But it usually sparks from somewhere else, right?
Yeah. And so I know, me and you have talked about this, but to any listener, there's such a thing called remote viewing, which, the U.S. government has had a program of people doing remote viewing, and a bunch of other governments have that program. But remote viewing is using your mind to view something or get information from somewhere that you are not, whether it's a different place or whether it's in the past or whether it's in the future. And so people have done this, and they've gotten very high success rates. Some of the guys that do this are in the 90% of the time they're right about whatever information they're trying to bring back. So if someone asks them a question about, okay, what, if you go, if the person is, the remote viewer is in Seattle, they ask him, okay, if you go to Washington, D.C., and you go 3 blocks this way and 10 blocks this way, what do you see on the wall? And they'll come back with an answer. They'll consult their mind, or however they do it. I'm not really sure how they do it, if they're closing their eyes or whatnot, but they will bring an answer back. And some of them are only right, maybe 60% of the time, and then the really good ones are right like 90-some% of the time. Where's that information coming from? Like, how is that person able to bring that forth? Like, what's the process involved? And then, like, because I'm firmly a believer that this exists, that it's real. I mean, it's been documented for 50 plus years that this is real. Then I get into, as a nutritionist type person, well, okay, what are the people that do it, 90+% of correctness, what are they eating? What's their diet like? How coherent is their mind outside of that? Like, if you talk to them, what kind of conversations are they putting forth? Are they more just lucid with their speech and mannerisms than the other people who might have a 50% success rate? Like, you know what I mean? And I've never actually. I met one guy who did remote viewing. I have no idea what his success rate was, but
did you see his mannerisms? Was he normal mannerisms?
He was a strange fella.
I would have to if I were to guess, it would be something would have to be definitely different from the normal average person.
I think just to accept that that is real, you have to be a different kind of person. But if it was commonly accepted that it was real, and no one was embarrassed by talking about it and saying that they thought it was real, then I think you would find that a bunch of normal people have that ability. Like, and I think women have it at a way higher rate than men have it, which, they're known for kind of having more, at least definitely social awareness and intuition along those lines. Some people just feel those things, like the sense of correctness that is like given to them in an instant, and they go with it. Like, that's a strong. I don't usually have those types of sensations that strongly, that sort of intuition that something is right. Usually it's very, very subtle for me, and I mostly act out of logic. Probably, as a childhood filled with problem solving, you get really stuck in a logical mindset.
Mm-hmm.
But that's definitely one of the goals for me, is to get closer and closer to that intuitive mindset, and just trust that really small voice, because it's like the most quiet voice in your head. I was listening to, I think, someone else's podcast maybe a couple days ago, and they were talking about how actually they were talking about remote viewing, and they were talking about the people who are best at remote viewing are people who don't really pass judgment. They just accept things as they are.
Mm-hmm. There's no good or bad. They're just are things.
Yeah, it just exists.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that that you do a remote viewing and you're given some intuitive picture of whatever information you're trying to get, and the people who just accept information that's given to them apparently are good at that skill, but the people who they want things to be a certain way, and so their mind will just automatically change it. Like, they're given the same information, but the mind, like, before you can interpret any results, like, it will change the information that's given to you to just, like, manipulate it to be what you want it to be, and it'll be wrong,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't think our topics would lead us to remote viewing, but
I
I think.
have no idea how we got here. Yeah, I could talk about ways of thinking just endlessly.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about health is that you have to have these different viewpoints on things because how are you going to get anywhere?
It's crazy that a lot of people in the nutrition world, it's like all or nothing. It's like either I eat meat or I don't eat meat.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at Weston Price's book, where he went around and looked at all those different cultures in the 30s and 40s,
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing that, and these are all cultures that are known for being in really good health. And so he went there and he looked at, and people aren't. It's not all or nothing. It's not. They're not like we either don't eat grains or we just eat a ton of grains all the time. And they would eat meat. I remember specifically, at least one of these cultures, they would eat meat like once a week.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, if they kill an animal, the whole village or however many people would all share that animal, but they don't have a way of preserving the meat, so it's all eaten that night, and that's it. And then they don't have enough animals to kill one every single day, so it's like once a week, eat meat. And that perfectly aligns with the research that I'm doing of the meat having this lasting health effect over several days. It just makes so much sense to do it that way. If you're gonna eat meat at all, and there might be ways to be healthy without eating meat. I just haven't fully explored yet. But that's just so interesting.
Yeah, or even just having that openness to even try that approach.
Yeah, like go to. You don't have to go just you eat meat or you don't eat meat. Like, you can go to like what is proven to work by these tribal cultures. Like, you can once or twice a week you have a little bit of meat here and there, which is pretty much what I'm doing.
Yeah, same here. I've been doing that for a while now. I think when I go out, I think I'm going to start this once spring break and vacation. We go into vacation. I might just have to, just if don't have any food on hand and we're going out to eat all the time, I'll probably have to choose that route because there's just not going to be a good source.
Yeah, I wonder, because I haven't been on any trip where we really ate out like a ton. I guess I haven't been on a trip since the pandemic hit 2020. But I definitely want to go on a road trip now and see, can I survive and thrive like under those conditions where you don't, maybe you're only able to cook like one meal a day, maybe like your breakfast or something, and then you're just forced to eat out for the rest of it. Can you still do good?
I definitely have. Like when I went on some trips last year.
Yeah.
But those are lifestyle. How you spend your day. I mean, we're spending all day hiking and always doing some adventure every day.
Yeah.
So, if we're at that bar the whole night, drinking and, it's probably gonna be a little bit different.
Yeah, I always tell you about this experience I had. We were in like Big Sur, California for a couple days. I was up there and I was just eating just the same crap that everyone else was eating, but all day was hiking, all day was out in nature. Um, and they had just really amazing hiking trails there where it's like you're not like it's very shaded, so most of the trail you're like in redwood shade basically. So
Hmm.
it was just and in the ocean's right there, so you got like ocean ionized air. But yeah, I could just eat the same way that everyone else ate, just random crap, and still have phenomenal energy and all positive emotions. Just
Hmm.
everything was just working great, and I guess there's a kind of a good lesson to pull out of that is you don't have to have everything be perfect. You just have to look for the things that are really fucking you. They're just
Yeah.
really destroying you.
I was wondering if you ever struggle with that. Like, do you ever have to go to the bathroom? Does that wake you up during your sleep? I just think it's funny because I don't go to the restroom a bunch during the day when I'm up. You know.
Ah, okay. So that hones it in on for me a little bit. So when you basically when you turn the lights out, your body reverts back to whatever nutrients it has stored for basically for reappearance. I know yeah, you've heard me use that term reappearance before. I'm not sure if it's been on the podcast, but there's certain nutrients that cause reappearance of those nutrients later on after you've had the meal, like a day later, 2 days later, 3 days later. I'm not sure exactly why that's caused by some meals and not by others, or some nutrients not by other nutrients. But some things cause a reappearance effect, and that reappearance effect happens, or at least the reappearance effect I'm thinking of happens during some sort of stress. So, I think it happens when driving a car for whatever reason. There's some sort of stress put on you by that, and so that causes this reappearance effect to happen of whatever meal it was that is causing a reappearance effect. It takes you back to that meal, and maybe that meal was 2 days ago. So it
Hmm.
starts pumping out the nutrients into your bloodstream from that meal. And so when you turn the lights off, it's the exact same thing. All of a sudden you're in stress mode again, and you're reaching back to whatever meal that you're pulling from. So I would say that meal that you're pulling from in these stressful moments is not good. It's not nourishing you in those moments of stress. And so you
Hmm.
need to, in my opinion, work on building that meal with different substances that they work together in whatever way to not cause negative effects and not cause a gut breakdown, which is, I'm guessing, is what's happening, because you're getting a serotonin effect. So it could be causing some overgrowth of fungus, perhaps. That's causing an overproduction of acetic acid that's breaking the gut down, and that's why you're having the serotonin effect. Or it could be just a type of food you're eating that irritates, like I always think of ginger, but I'm not actually positive with ginger. I believe ginger causes some sort of serotonin issue, just naturally, just by virtue of the food. And there's many other foods that have that effect as well. Even like sugar has a mild, gut irritating effect. But
Just regular table sugar or sucrose.
yeah,
I gotcha.
so that would be my guess, man.
Well, that's a lot to play with, man. I'll definitely look at that.
I know. Like if I'm just being truthful with answers. It's like it just usually just blows people away, and they're like, I'm not gonna listen to any of that.
No, I was kind of heading towards pretty much everything that I was doing was probably that some way, shape, or form needs to be changed,
Well,
or
I
the time,
mean,
or the timing of certain things.
yeah, it's
But
crazy because we change one piece of what we're doing. It's like I've been having these potatoes with iceberg lettuce, and then like five or six other things. But now I'm doing it without the iceberg lettuce with the potatoes, and
mhm.
that one thing can change so many things down the line, almost like that. What do they call that? Like the butterfly effect. Like if you change one thing in the past, it'll have all these crazy unintended consequences in the future.
Yeah, yeah.
Dude, it's like that in nutrition, man. You take out one thing, you thinking that, I don't know, spinach or something. I just don't feel like spinach is helping me. Like I don't feel any good sensations from spinach. Like I just don't see it doing anything. Like I'm just gonna get rid of it. Like if it doesn't make me feel good, then I don't need to be eating it. So it's out, right? And you get rid of spinach, and then all of a sudden you're having this breakdown of like you can't get vitamin D to activate, and therefore since you can't do that, you try and eat these high calcium foods like milk and whatnot, cheese, and you just have no taste for them. You feel like you're forcing them down, and since you're forcing them down and you're not vitamin D activated, calcium actually irritates your gut, and so then you're getting serotonin effects from trying to consume the calcium that you were previously consuming just fine.
Hmm.
So it's just like effect after effect after effect happens, and you'll get to that like fifth effect, and you don't even know how the hell you got there, or most people, because they haven't spent 10 years like tracking their sensations. And I guess that's kind of why we're doing this podcast, right? It's to tell people about this stuff.
For sure.
Sub 4 minute mile running was possible. Like no one did it. And then once the first person did it, it's obviously a sign that it can be done. And then like everyone did it. Like the next year, like there's like 100 people that did it. It's almost the same thing in a lot of these ideas that we're working with. Like the idea that you can get, like you're just in average health, you're doing just fine. Well, this idea that you can go from just fine to like amazing is not an idea that most people have. Like that's not even in their realm. They have no concept of that. That idea does not exist for them. And
You
so,
mean you mean like just gauging performance day to day, or
like the best day you've ever had in your life, you should be able to have that day once a week. I mean, just going out to feelings. Obviously, there's event-based stuff that you can't repeat every week. So
right? We can't go
pulling,
tubing every day.
no, but I tell people things that might sound a little crazy, but I've had moments just like where I'm by myself, like in the kitchen. It's just like the most fantastic like night or something. Like just my mind is just lit up as if I was, like a teenager. Like, when you're a teenager, you're lit up like in so many ways, but many of the ways are negative. You know what I mean? So you can shoot back and forth between outrageous high positives, and then down to just crippling negatives. But if you can do that, like you could stay in the positive territory if you wrap your hand around the factors that are causing that as a teenager. But then as an older person, I've had these moments where I reach back and I get all those same crazy wild sensations of that I had as a teenager. Only it's like just the positive side now. Because when I was a teenager, it was like some positive and then a lot of negative, and then swing back, maybe outrageous high positive for a real brief period, and then just swing like, super negative. But I've had just outrageous moments that it's hard to even talk about, because it's all just, you can only be characterized by like the sensations. And it's hard to talk about just like one period, how good it is. Like we almost don't have words for things that are good. Most of our words and language is like for things that are bad, because that's where we want to try and avoid that. So it's like that's the things we try and describe. You know, we need to build. Hopefully, me and you can help build this vocabulary for things that are good, things that are positive, things that are uplifting. Just the thinking and the sensations behind that is it's a wild. It's still a wild idea for me, even because I've only been going down this road for honestly since about 2015, 2016 was like the first kind of time frame where I had that concept. I was like, oh man, because I was just trying to fix problems before that. Like I had, you know, some decent sized problems in my health that I was trying to fix, and then that time period hit, and I accidentally got some outrageously high highs in my 30s, and it was just showing me like, oh my God, this is amazing. I had no concept that this could even exist. So I just stumbled on this, and now I guess it's kind of our main focus, I guess you could say.
We're basically treasure hunters, but with health.
That should be the logo. That should be like the Health Chasers logo.
You know, I'm kind of infatuated with like some people, particularly like authors, like writers, because they're able to kind of get going like at weird hours of the night, and just keep that energy flow going to create something amazing.
Actually, this was a topic I was going to email to you. I haven't emailed you yet, but there's something I call like a gut hibernator. And so you eat certain things in the food, and they just like tell your gut to hibernate. And so you'll have a meal like at noon, and there's a gut hibernator in there, and your gut just shuts down for like 12 hours, you know, just doesn't process any of that stuff for 12 hours. And then for whatever reason, if it charges up, you know, 12 over those 12 hours or whatever, but like at midnight, it'll start digesting that. And so you see the benefits of that noon meal at midnight, late at night. And then all of a sudden you're just like hit with, you know, if it was a good meal, real beneficial meal, like you're just hit with like amazing effects. It could even be like in the middle of your sleep. Like I think I've been actually experiencing that for the last 2 or 3 days, where just like 2 or 3 in the morning, I'm just getting amazing sensations of. I think that exact same situation. That's why I'm bringing it up, because it's like I've been trying out something new in the meal around noontime, and I think it's a gut disruptor, hibernator. And yeah, that meal is just digesting like 12 to 15 hours later, and that could be a reason why authors do their best work at like 3-4 in the morning. That's what I'm thinking. Absolutely. Yeah, it's not like, you know, 3 in the morning is the time. That's not like the creative time. There's nothing special about 3 in the morning. In fact, if you're getting really good digestion and you don't have any of these gut disruptors, hibernators, whatnot, nothing should really be going on at 3 in the morning. Like you should be not energized in that way, because you want that effect to happen like afternoon, you know? Like you need good things to be happening in that afternoon. You don't need to be totally out of it. All right, brother. Well, let's close this thing. It's been good. You have a good one. I'll see you next time. All right, man. Peace out.